Imagine paying millions of dollars for sneakers, only to realize they don't exist. Not the kind of hype you're used to. No viral video, just tens and thousands of collectors, thousands of orders, all echoing silence. This wasn't a sneaker drop. This was the largest heist that the sneaker culture has ever seen.
This is from Zadeh Kicks.
We're talking Zadeh Kicks.
Zadeh Kicks.
Zadeh Kicks.
Infamous sneaker resale business, Zadeh Kicks.
Owner of Zadeh Kicks asked the court to dissolve his company.
In 2013, a sneakerhead from Eugene, Oregon named Michael Malikzadeh, known online as Zadeh Kicks, started flipping sneakers on eBay. He had just been fired from the Nike store in Portland, Oregon, after only working there for less than a year, where he got fired for going and using his Nike employee discount and then reselling those shoes for the retail value. And in doing this, he began making enough profit to start a sneaker resale business. And due to him working at Nike and being behind the scenes, he built trust by sourcing rare retro Jordans through backdoor relationships with retailers. By 2015, his small sneaker resale business reached $2 million in annual sales. And by 2017, he was making over $6 million a month. And by 2020, he reached the top 1% in Shopify merchants. And in 2021, over 84,000 sales of pre-orders over $100 million. But trouble was brewing. Just shortly after opening his company in 2013, he began to be a little bit successful. But by 2014, he had a warehouse fire that destroyed over $400,000 in inventory and left orders unfulfilled. And Zadeh Kicks wasn't just a small resale business. He wanted to become the next StockX, selling thousands of pairs every day of some of the most exclusive Jordans that money can buy. Even by 2014, he was no longer flipping these shoes that he got from the Nike store for a few $100. He was moving hundreds of pairs. And due to this warehouse fire, Zadeh Kicks took out multiple loans to get back on his feet. But some of these were merchant cash advances with very steep APRs. And by 2019, he owed over $1 million in high interest loans. For those who don't understand that, he borrowed money and was looking at a 40% markup on what he had to pay back. And when we're looking at $1 million, that's quite a bit. And according to Nice Kicks and the Bloomberg article, he was making weekly payments of up to $55,000 a week. And by 2021, $750,000 of this was still unpaid. But this was all private information. From the outside looking in, he still looked like he was a very wealthy guy. But Zadeh Kicks had to make a crucial decision on how he was going to pay back this money and also how he could continue this luxury lifestyle. And this is where he began creating the biggest money heist that the sneaker world has ever seen. In fall of 2020, Zadeh Kicks began taking on multiple pre-orders. And for those who don't understand this, pre-orders were a guaranteed chance at getting a shoe. So let's just say hypothetically that this Jordan 1 high right here retails for $180. But when they drop, they sell out almost immediately, and anybody else who wants a pair has to buy them on the resale market. And depending on how limited these sneakers were on the drop and how big the demand is, this usually delegates what the price of this sneaker is on the resale market. But what if there was a way for you to set a pre-order to where you could get that sneaker for retail or maybe just a little bit over retail, and you could pay for it months in advance, but you were guaranteed this pair of shoes around the time of the release? See, that's what Zadeh Kicks did. And due to his background at Nike, and he actually had a very credible business in the beginning. While living in Oregon, he was near the Nike headquarters, people believed that he had backdoor access. This is another term well known in the sneaker world as backdooring, which is basically if a store gets 1,000 pairs of Jordans, they raffle them off completely random, and anybody with a raffle ticket can win for retail of $180, like that Jordan 1 I mentioned before. But backdooring sneakers is when you can get them literally backdoored. So you still pay the retail price, but like a Foot Locker employee or a Nike employee might save you a few pairs or 100 pairs or whatever out of this inventory and give them to you backdoor. And then when there's an online raffle, people just think that they weren't lucky enough. And then on paper, it doesn't really matter because they're still selling them at the retail cost, but one customer is getting a majority of them instead of a bunch of random people. There's been countless examples of backdooring sneakers, and there's been countless times where Nike has even went as far as like suing certain locations or making people pay for what they've done. But backdooring sneakers is a huge problem because it gives the general public no chance at all to even get them fairly. And this is where people's hatred for resellers began, because resellers get all the inventory, they hike up the price and sell them on the resale market, and it's all just a supply and demand game. You see, this is is where Zadeh Kicks began to capitalize, because people trusted him and they also believed that he had connections. So let's use that same Jordan 1 for example that retails for 180 bucks. You might pay him $200 or $220 like a month or two before the shoe comes out, and you would suspect that Zadeh Kicks might make 20, 40, 50 bucks on each shoe, but he is securing them for retail through this backdoor situation. So on Zadeh Kicks' side, he's selling them for much less profit, but he is guaranteed the sales before the shoe even comes out, and the customer is happy because they're getting them for less than the resale value. So this is what Zadeh Kicks began being known for. People also suspected that Zadeh Kicks dealt with bots, and for those who don't know, once again, bots are something that you set up on your computer and it costs a lot of money, and basically it's able to auto check out hundreds or thousands of pairs of shoes at like literally like the blink of an eye. Faster than you could even click the keyboard, it can check out 100 or 1,000 pairs. They're very expensive and it takes a lot of computer programming, but the whole moral of the story is nobody asked questions on how he got them. All that mattered was that they were getting their products. Well, some people were. So what started out in the beginning, to my knowledge, was a successful business model. He was somehow acquiring and curating these sneakers and fulfilling these pre-orders. But then cracks started to show. And one time it was StockX that actually exposed him by accident. And StockX used to release their reseller portfolios, and Zadeh Kicks' numbers were astronomical. He was buying hundreds and thousands of pairs on StockX, which didn't really make sense with this whole pre-order thing, because you would buy them on the aftermarket, the resale market, and then you would lose money if you sold them to your pre-orders, right? Like that doesn't really make sense. But by 2021, the cracks were almost impossible to hide. These pre-orders piled up, refund requests weren't answered, but yet Zadeh Kicks' site was still active and he kept pulling in more and more cash and pre-orders. And according to prosecutors, at one point he owed his customers over $70 million. But the crazy part was people were still vouching for him. On online sneaker forums, people were getting their orders in. And it was like a 50-50 debate of people saying that he was legit and people were still waiting on their refunds or never got their orders for 2-3 years now. But weirdly enough, there was hundreds of thousands of customers that were very happy with his business, and they received their stuff on time and everything was good. Most of them being resellers that would once again buy them for a little bit over resell and then flip them online or flip them in their store or whatever they had. Some of these customers were even ordering hundreds of pairs of these exclusive Air Jordans, and they were actually getting them. And when you look on Zadeh Kicks' story, it wasn't sneakers, it was luxury. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, high-end watches, designer clothing. So what was really going on? In the spring of 2022, it all came crashing down. Investigators uncovered the truth. Zadeh was not a sneaker Mongol. He was running one of the largest fraud schemes that the sneaker world had ever seen. People started to find out that he was taking these pre-orders and only fulfilling some of them. So some of his customers were vouching for him, but the majority of the money that the customers sent him was just funding his luxury lifestyle. And just one example of this was the Jordan 11 Cool Grays that released in 2021, I believe. Zadeh Kicks did what he always did for hype releases, and he put up a pre-order on his website. Basically, you could just go on his website, pay the $200 or whatever it was, and that would secure you one pair, and the money would go to his account, and you were guaranteed these shoes in 2 to 3 months. Well, for the most part, that also lines up with PayPal and most credit cards dispute times, but after a certain amount of time, usually 2 to 3 to 4 months, that you can no longer dispute it. And Zadeh Kicks was coincidentally promising the shoes after 2 to 3 or 4 months or whatever it was. So it was almost impossible to dispute these charges. But on these Jordan 11 Cool Grays, he put no cap on how many pre-orders he could get. And Zadeh Kicks racked up 600,000 pre-orders for the Jordan 11 Cool Gray. And just for reference, only 800,000 to 900,000 pairs were released in the entire world. So how was Zadeh Kicks gonna get his hands on over half of the inventory that dropped on Nike across the entire world? We're not just talking about the United States. Well, he had no plan to. According to the Department of Justice, he would take all these pre-orders, take the money, and he only shipped about 6,000 pairs, which was enough for some customers to vouch for him. But what he would also do with this pre-order money was he would use this to buy shoes on StockX to fulfill earlier pre-orders from a few months or years prior. So he would take this pre-order money from the Jordan 11 Cool Grays that dropped in 2021, and then he would go and buy sneakers on StockX and fulfill orders from 2019 and 2020. And he was just borrowing money from one place to pay his other debts. It was all a huge mess of money laundering and fraud. And And when people started demanding refunds, he somehow made it even worse. He introduced Z-Bucks. And basically these were gift cards loaded with internal credit to keep the money circulating inside of his system. So rather than refunding the customers, he would give them pretty much store credit or a gift card so that you could buy more shoes from his website with your refund money. But keep in mind, he didn't ship those orders either. And some of these gift cards held an unlimited balance. And these virtual gift cards racked up millions and millions of dollars of more debt. So basically, let's say you spent $10,000 on a pre-order, you never got it, and a year later he gives you $10,000 in credit for you to spend on his website that you would also never get. And by April 2022, his website vanished. Customers were locked out, emails bounced, no more payments, and he took down his LLC business so that none of this ever existed, and everything was then managed by a court-appointed receiver. The government was onto him, and Zadeh panicked. He sold 80 of his luxury watches, he sold over 100 handbags that him and his wife owned, and in one single transaction, he sold 4 of his luxury vehicles, 2 Lamborghinis, a Mercedes, and a vintage Mustang. And all of this between his watches, his handbags, and his cars totaled up to about $6 million. That didn't even put a dent in his debt. He sold off all of his sneaker inventory. His warehouse was empty. His luxury cars were all sold off in a panic, and the promise of these sneaker pre-orders was gone. Thousands of customers, collectors, sneaker shops, and everyday kids lost their money. Some lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and others lost their entire life savings. And finally, the feds closed in, and Zadeh Kicks was arrested on multiple charges of wire fraud, conspiracy to commit bank fraud, and money laundering. And in the court documents, just one of these money laundering accusations came from a $2.4 million transfer from his PayPal account into his personal account, which I didn't even know that you could have $2.4 million in your PayPal account. Another one of these money laundering accusations came from when he moved $790,000 from his business account into his personal account, where he reportedly bought a $420,000 watch and a $79,000 car in the same day. You can't just do these things and expect the government or whoever to not notice that. It's not like you're sending one of your friends a cash app for like 50 bucks. We're talking about moving millions of dollars here. And the government started to line everything up. And investigators analyzed loan documents and reconstructed these pre-orders. And by 2022, they were able to establish a total. And it was $65 to $70 million in unfulfilled orders from his sneaker business, and then another $15 million in fraudulent loans, as well as being hit with theft from all of his customers. And in 2025, Zadeh Kicks and his wife, who was also named as the CFO of his company, pled guilty to wire fraud and bank fraud conspiracy, where they admitted that their scheme costed their own customers more than $65 million, and they pleaded guilty to defrauding banks of over $15 million in fraudulent loan applications. And during their raid, the FBI seized over $6.4 million in cash, nearly 100 luxury watches, and dozens of designer handbags and jewelry, and about $7.5 million of proceeds came from the sale of his home. And sentencing this year could actually expose him to over a decade behind bars. And this wasn't just a fall, this was a wake-up call. Sneaker culture thrives on trust and hype, but it also lacks consumer protections. And we've seen this with the lawsuit on StockX and Nike, and how at one point StockX was caught selling thousands of pairs of sneakers that you could never return, so you were just stuck with them. And when that trust breaks, the fallout reaches beyond just money that was lost. And I feel like without the StockX situation and this whole Zadeh Kicks situation, the sneaker culture might not have ever put protection in place for consumers. But one thing is for sure is that Zadeh Kicks' legacy is burned into the sneaker culture, and a reminder that not every plug is legit. And that pretty much wraps up today's video. I hope you guys enjoy. This one took a lot of research and a lot of time, so if you guys haven't already, drop a like, comment, subscribe. And I just want to say thank you guys for the continued support. I've been working on a video that's outside of this video for about a week and a half now, and I'm hoping that I can make it come to light. And some of these stories that I cover still have like active lawsuits attached to them, so I can't just reach out to people and be like, hey, what happened or whatever. But trust me, I'm working on one video that's gonna probably break the internet, but I just have to make sure that the facts are straight and everything's good before I can publish it. But until then, you can keep watching these videos, and there's videos that I post pretty much every day on my Instagram right here. That's pretty much where I post all the videos that don't make it here on YouTube. So if you guys haven't already checked out my Instagram, definitely do that. And I just recently got back from SneakerCon New York about a week or two ago, and I loved it. You guys were amazing. I met a bunch of you guys. I took a bunch of pictures with you guys, and I don't think I ever said on YouTube that I was going to SneakerCon New York. So yeah, if you guys want to see me or see where I'm at or what events I'm going to, definitely check out my Instagram, because I love meeting you guys. And that being said, I love you guys so much, and we will see you guys in the next video. Peace.